Good morning, everyone. You're going to feel this class is a little bit different. I am sending a new material, which is a little bit different than the ones that you've been receiving so far in your class. Today, I would like to introduce to you this new topic, which is the total collapse of the human government on Earth. You may be wondering, what is this topic about? Well, this is something that has to see with the book of the prophet Daniel in chapter 2. In chapter 2 of the book of Daniel, we see the story of a king that is having a dream. So we talked about a dream of King Nebuchadnezzar. He was a very important king in Mesopotamia, the king of Babylon. And he was wondering about the future one night. And God was going to give him the opportunity to know about the future through a dream. Of course, he was going to be totally unable to understand the dream unless someone was coming to his help. So, the next morning, he was doing what normally a king from Babylon was doing, calling his magicians and sorcerers and wise men. He wanted to know about a dream. So he made a proposition saying, I had a dream last night that I just totally forgot. So I need you to help me with something. Tell me the dream, give me the interpretation of the dream, and I will give you glory in Babylon. The sorcerers were not happy with this proposition coming from Nebuchadnezzar, saying, Tell us the dream, we will give you the interpretation. But the king was mad, saying, No, because I know that you're wicked men, and you are going to tell me something that is not true. I don't want lies. You give me the dream, that I may know that you also have the interpretation to that dream. If not, something bad is going to happen. And the sorcerers insisted, such a thing has never been requested from a king. So how you dare you to make such a proposition? So the king was so furious that he said, Kill all the wise men and sorcerers in Babylon, including also Daniel and his friends. When Daniel learned that the king was so angry, he wanted to know why. And then they explained to him the reason. And then Daniel was coming to the presence of the king saying, Give me a break. Give me time, and I will bring the dream and interpretation to you. And that day, Daniel saved the life of the sorcerers from Babylon and also the life of his friends. In the night, God was going to come to Daniel with the revelation that he badly needed by the time. The secret was revealed to Daniel in a night vision. Daniel said, The name of the Lord is blessed. He removes kings and establishes kings. He gives wisdom to the wise. So, Daniel received the dream plus the interpretation to the dream, and he was ready to come to the presence of the king. The next day, Daniel was coming with a reply to the king saying, King Nebuchadnezzar, the dream you had that night was about a statue that was really terrible, with a golden head. He got shoulders of silver, thighs of brass. He also had legs of iron, and so on. The king was deeply surprised to see that finally someone, Daniel, got the dream plus interpretation. And Daniel was going to explain the interpretation to the king. We're going to see this later. But first of all, we need to understand that Daniel was going to receive this from God, and he was coming to the presence of the king, and the king was going to give Daniel honor for receiving. And King Nebuchadnezzar understood that the God of Daniel was the God of dreams. That dream was the statue of Nebuchadnezzar. And that statue was representing human governments from the time of Babylon to the last human government ever in history. And there you have it. That statue is the representation of all human governments, beginning with Nebuchadnezzar in Babylon and ending in defeat. We're going to see what is the Bible making reference about defeat later on. But this is the statue. As you may see, it was a weird and terrible statue, but this is exactly what God meant it in the dream. Though we see that the statue is representing the human governments, and we're going to see later that this is the collapse of human governments. Why? Because it's the government of man from gold to clay, from the best to the worst. So God is telling to Nebuchadnezzar through Daniel that human governments are coming down. They are in decay. They're coming from the very best, which is gold, and then they're going to end up in what is iron and clay. This is something that says that it's coming from the best to the worst. And yes, Daniel was able to give the interpretation to the king of Babylon, saying the head of gold represents Babylon, and this is you. Later, after you, Daniel explains, there is a new kingdom coming. There is represented by silver, the breast of silver. Of course, Daniel was not going to be in anticipation to know what was the name of that kingdom. We understand that later after Babylon came Persia, but all Daniel said was, after you is coming a kingdom, but that kingdom was going to be less in glory. That's why we go from the top to the less, from the best to the worst, because it was going to be no longer gold but silver, and that was going to be the representation of the next empire, that was Persia, as you may see in the screen. After Persia was coming Greece, that was represented by the thighs of brass. There, the Greek Empire that was led by Alexander the Great was precisely the thighs of brass. That was from BC 331 to 168. The glory of Greece was not going to last longer. But then came the legs of iron. The legs of iron is represented by Rome, and it's interesting here to see that it's no longer gold or silver or brass, but iron. Iron is not so precious as the previous metals. That's why we say that there is a decay in the way that humans are governing themselves. And the legs of iron representing Rome was going to be from BC 168 to AD 476. Important to mention here, two legs. Remember that Rome, characterized by a division, was a division in the empire, and then there was a time when the Roman Empire was going to be in the west and in the east. Western Empire, the Eastern Empire of Rome, the Roman Empire, and is represented by the two legs, as you may see there. But this is also a government. Later after that, what we see there is precisely the last government of human beings, which is represented by the feet of iron and clay. Divided nations of Western Europe is the explanation at the base. That's something very important to mention about the feet, because we need to pay attention to the last government on earth. And this last government on earth is what concerns me in this class. It's the worst human government. It's the worst because it's made of iron and clay, has no purity in it. It's just a mixture of clay and iron. And why clay and iron? Because according to the explanation of Daniel, it will be a government that is not united. They will never have unity. Why? Because it's just agreement by papers being signed that they are going to be working together, but in their hearts they're going to be deeply separated. As you may see, the feet, that they are 10 fingers in these 2 feet, is because every finger is representing a nation. So we understand that the last human government on earth will be a government composed by 10 nations. 10 nations. One feet is going to have 5 nations, and the other feet is having also 5 nations. Remember that we said previously that every leg is representing also the Roman Empire that was in the west and the Roman Empire that was in the east. So it's easy to understand that 5 nations are going to be from the west and 5 nations are going to be from the east. Let me explain. 5 nations from Europe and 5 nations from Asia. And why Asia? Because if you see the map, this is the Roman Empire at its highest extent. You will see how big the Roman government was. And of course, there were plenty of nations from Europe, but also there were regions in importance from there, from Asia, right? And that's why we say that as one leg was representing the Western Roman Empire and the other leg was representing the Eastern Roman Empire, so it's easy to conclude that 5 nations from one foot are going to be from the old Western Roman Empire, and the other 5 nations from the other foot, it's logically representing the missing of the other region of the Eastern Roman Empire. So the other 5 nations might be from the Eastern or the old Eastern Roman Empire. This government that is the worst that is going to come to the world very soon might be composed though of 5 nations from Western Europe and 5 nations from Asia. When you see that there is a human government that is making alliances, signing documents, they're going to be working together as the unity of 10 nations, 5 from Europe and 5 from Asia, there you can see that it's the last human government on earth. And who is going to be the head of this government? Of course, someone is going to be the head of this government, and we understand and anticipate who. The worst government is the Antichrist rule. The head of this government is going to be precisely the worst leader that the earth is going to see, the Antichrist. The Antichrist is going to rule from these 10 nations, and is going to be the worst government on earth. Why? Because his intentions are so wicked. He is going to try to change everything. He is going to go against religion, against Christians, against Jewish people, against whatever we call good. He is the vivid representation of Satan on earth, and he is going to be the head of this government. The government that is represented by clay mixed with iron, and it's not going to last long. It's going to be a very short period of time. Why? Because suddenly something is going to happen. In the dream of Nebuchadnezzar, something that scared him deeply was that when he was looking at this statue that was standing on these feet of iron and clay, he saw that suddenly from the sky was coming a rock on fire that was coming in a very, very fast way and hit the feet of clay and destroyed the feet of clay and iron, and also all the statue was coming down. And this rock was going to destroy and smash all the reminiscences that existed about this human government on earth. Christ's new government is powerfully ending all human governments on earth. That rock you can see there is the rock that represents Jesus Christ coming to the world to rule and is smashing all human governments that exist or is going to exist at that time or had existed before, because we're going to see that human governments were just a complete failure on earth. But something is going to happen. It's not only that the rock is going to destroy all human governments on earth, he is going to replace them all. And when the rock is on the ground, suddenly it's going to start growing and growing until it became a huge mountain. And that mountain is representing the eternal government of Christ on earth. So solid, so firm, that nothing is going to shake it again. Cannot be compared to any other form of government on earth. That way, Nebuchadnezzar was going to receive from God, which were his plans and projections for the future. And Daniel is saying that that rock that became a mountain was going to be the eternal government of God on earth. Later on, we understand that it was talking about Jesus Christ. And that's it. The collapse of human government is going to come because Jesus Christ is going to intervene in human history and is going to stop all form of human government to impose his own eternal government on earth. And there we're going to experience finally peace and joy. Thank you.